that I've also noticed in doing this work is the need to really sort of normalize community-based practices in doing this. We talked about this in our group a little bit, how we can sort of take on a project and feel as if it's our project alone, and we don't think about partnering with other people, of working collaboratively in order to understand the issue, and also to literally ask the question of the people who are involved, what is it that you like to do? What is it that you like to learn? So to think about these experiences as learning experiences for the entire community, as a way to sort of organize and deal with all the issues of partial knowledge and misrepresentation and all the other things that we know that are very apt to happen when you're doing this kind of social justice work that is so big and is so complicated. But if we think about it from the standpoint of collaboration, as opposed to that wise voice that's providing strong leadership to break through something, I think we have a much greater chance of finding success and incorporating people, and it builds people into that community orientation that we think is so important.
I want to see us strengthen our positive affirmation of human capacity with a stronger recognition that our capacities require training and development to be directed aright, as Channing said. Our human capacities and powers are not inherently reliable. Even capacities such as compassion or empathy need not only to be awakened, they need to be trained for how they can be used well. Because even compassion and empathy can be used for purposes that harm life, that are evil. So we have to train all of our capacities for how they can be used in ethical and life-sustaining ways. This training requires both ritual and education. So the early Christians were interesting in the way that they prepared people for the ritual of baptism through a long process of education and spiritual discipline that strengthened people's abilities, for example, to recognize evil in themselves and around them, and to exercise their powers to resist evil. So the ritual that baptism marked the way the Imago Dei is present in each person, the image of God is in each person. But that affirmation only came after a long preparation of spiritual discipline and education to train the intellectual powers and the moral powers and the spiritual powers around resisting evil. This means for us that I want us to think about how we do rituals of initiation and how we do practices of education in ways that really hone and develop our capacity to use our powers wisely, ethically, and in the service of life.
Mutuality is a commitment to knowing one another, to honoring one another, to being changed by one another, just as we are at this moment, not who we will one day become. This kind of mutuality requires forgiveness. It requires safety. We cannot do it unless we have some place of safety. It involves inevitable bumbling mistakes and the forgiveness of ourselves when we do that, and the ability to be vulnerable. It requires encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. Sound familiar? It requires a relentless interrogation of ourselves and our milieu for searching for meaning and truth. It requires justice, equity, and compassion. These are essential parts of our faith.
I'm a student again. I'm getting a master's in applied healing arts at Thai Sophia Institute in Laurel, Maryland. And Thai Sophia is East and West great wisdom. And my current independent study is called Meditations and Practices on the Breast Cancer Journey, because I'm in treatment now. So I'm really in a time of waiting and moving through learning and the emotional roller coaster of having cancer. So the central question that emerged for me in this context is, what matters? What matters? I have a sense of paring down, of focusing on the essentials, of choosing strategically, of letting go of many, 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 many things. And this has been my difficult practice. We're using this right now, actually, in social justice ministries at All Souls, and it was a process that started earlier in the fall, really the day after the election, before I even knew I would be on this personal journey, where Rob and I met and talked for a long time about we have this profusion of social justice ministry at All Souls. What is the coherence? What's the frame or the map, or how is it coming together? And deciding, let's pare down and try to develop a lens that more articulates our primary frame, which is building multicultural, multiracial congregation, and to try to frame social justice work through that lens, so that what we do builds those relationships internally and externally.
Louise talks about how cancer sharpened her priorities and reaffirmed her congregation's commitment to building multicultural community as central in their social justice work. Has a crisis clarified or changed your priorities about how you spend your congregation's precious resources? Resources of time, attention, money? I think of the current financial crisis that looms as we produce this DVD, or Hurricane Katrina, or the events of September 11th, or other crises that have shifted us and may have shifted congregational focus. What else besides crisis might do that?
The metaphor that I like to use, that I return to all the time, is as a prophetic church, we start center with the church that has walls, and that as we gather together, we imagine those walls growing wider and wider and wider, and then becoming less and less solid, so that it's a metaphor that expands, so that suddenly when we think of we, there are no more walls, that we and community are one.
How true is Kate's metaphor for your congregation? What are the walls which are there now? What would it take to expand them, or give you some breathing space to learn as you stumble into them?